Hey guys, this is Forsaken Reality here with a tutorial on setting up crosshair projection, which will basically allow us to project our crosshair directly from our muzzle using a decal. And you'll be able to use whatever crosshairs you want, and this will also work for a laser sight. You just put a dot sight in there. So basically what we're going to create is this is it when it's permanently on. I just have a few test inputs so that this is it when it's permanently on, and you can toggle it off just because the test inputs that I was working on. This is it when it's set up with aiming, so you can aim and it will do it. I don't have the aiming animation, just the boom set up to turn aiming on and off. And you can disable it all together. You can have it always on. You'd have it always on if you want to use it for your cross here. So basically, this is now your crosshair. You notice the projectiles, it has a drop to it, so it isn't always making it to it, but that's where your projectile is shooting now. Also, be showing you how to redo the trace because you'll need the trace from your muzzle. So the first thing we're going to do is drag this project over to the side and launch Unreal Engine 4.26. This should work in any other version you want to use, but I'm just going to use this one. And I'm just going to make a first person project. And create the project. Don't need this garbage. I'm gonna go into my blueprints. First thing I'm gonna do is delete this because we don't need the first person HUD which displays our crosshair. And I want to open our character. First thing we're gonna do is delete a bunch of stuff out of here that we don't need. It's basically everything with this make transform that will plug directly into the spawn projectile. And where we're going to be spawning projectile in is our gun. So in any project, you get your gun reference, socket location, muzzle. And when I get our socket rotation, this will also work for a third person project in the line trace projectile, as well as a regular projectile. We want to get our forward vector. And we're going to plug this in rotation and it'll rotate it, get automatically our rotation from X, which is what we want. It's going to move this back a little bit more, make some room. And plug this directly into the location. So the location is the muzzle and the rotation is the muzzle's forward vector and the rotation from the X vector. So now we shoot our projectile, it will bounce off our gun because we're shooting from the muzzle, which is inside of our gun. There's a few ways we can fix that. One way would be to go to our projectiles collision component. Or actually, we won't do it this way. We'll just, and for this project at least, because most times it'll be set up properly if you put it into your third person or first person project. It's just because the projectile is so massive and it impacts with the gun in this one. So we'll go into our first person character. I can just close out of this HUD, won't need it ever again. Get our first person gun mesh and search to get directly to our gun skeleton. And we'll simply just pull our gun out of our, pull our socket out of our gun. And now we're shooting directly straight, you know, it's not spawning, some weird collision issues. So you want to go to your projectile spawn and your character and always spawn, ignore collisions. And then we have our bullet shooting directly out of our gun, straight out of wherever the socket's looking. Now we want to, I'm just gonna delete this reset VR. Delete all of this. That's all stuff that happens from when you're in VR mode and stuff like that. Hides the mesh and just plug that in. Just clean that up so you'll have a clean project that you can pull stuff from after. And I'm also going to color code the things that get changed so that if you ever want to load it up and just add things to another project, this is really simple as this. Basically, all we're going to be doing is our spawning projectile and our tick event. I'm going to get rid of these texts. And that will be fine for now. Okay, so now that we have our projectile spawning, right click and get tick event tick. And from here, we're going to want to actually create a function first. And this is going to be the laser trace. A crosshair trace. Would be a laser trace too, I guess. We're going to be using it as a crosshair right now. Okay, so first we want to right click and line trace by channel. If you have a projectile channel, you'd want to select that one. So that will handle all collision for you. First person gun, muzzle, get socket location, get socket rotation, muzzle. Make sure you spell it correctly because it's case sensitive. Muzzle. So we have the muzzle from our first person gun. Get forward vector of the rotation. This is just going to plug right into our start. And we're going to multiply this by a float, and this will determine how the length of our line trace. Just going to make it 50,000. We can actually promote to a variable, and this will determine how far your crosshair will project. So if you don't want it to project too far, you can set this to a smaller distance. Then we have our crosshair projection distance. I have 50,000, so we'll project on it basically everything within a pretty far radius. Plus, then you want to do a vector plus a vector, so we get our socket location, and then we'll get our forward vector times our crosshair distance. That'll be our end location. So the final that would be the end location make array. When I ignore self. And we'll comment this. There's the trace from the muzzle. And now I want to create a branch. I'll hold B and click. And I'll create a branch. And then we'll break hit results. So we're going to need that too. So if we hit something, spawn decal at location. And the location will be our impact point. And our rotation will be our, we need to find look at rotation. The target will be our impact point. And the start will be our wherever our crosshair is, our final crosshair position is basically. So plug this in over here. And I can just put this under here, maybe drag that down. Just comment that. And then we're going to plug this into our rotation. Our lifespan is only 0.01. And we're going to drag out of here, set fade screen size, and 0.0001, and this will allow us to see our decal at farther distances. Basically the distance by default is very small, so like you're like 4 feet away and you can't see the decal anymore. And no matter what else you do will change that. Oh yeah, you also want to set the size. I'm just going to set this to 10, 10, 10, and 10. And we can also just promote this to a variable. And since I filled it out, it will autofill that for me. So that'll just allow us to actually set. I'm going to put this into a category. So that'll be easier for you to notice when you want to. Don't use this variable anymore. This one's not here anymore. And so that's basically all we've added now. Our crosshairs. We wanted to move it to a new project. Collapse this. Move that up. It actually looks a bit better. You go to straighten connection to target. This makes it look a little neater. Now that we have that done, I believe that is our trace. So now I want to go to our event graph. Or actually, we don't have a material set in our spawn location, so we're going to create a material. It's going to create it a folder here. Since everything we're using is in here, the blueprint for the character. And in here, we're going to create a material. It's going to be called m_master crosshair. You'll be using the same thing for red dot size. So you just remember, you just put the dot instead of a crosshair or texture. And for this, it's going to be a deferred decal, translucent, we can hold T and click and we'll get a texture. And hold 3 and we'll get a 3 vector. And we're going to want to convert this to a parameter. Call this color because that'll give us our alpha. And we're going to want to create a multiply. We're going to get the RGB of the texture and the color. And that's going to be our base color. Our texture, for now, I'm just going to use this crosshair texture for the first person crosshair. It comes in the project, but you can use any crosshair texture you get or want, or any texture, really, a dot, basically anything can be projected that's a texture. And this will allow you to set the color of that. And we're also going to want to give it a glow and set the opacity. So I'm going to create another multiply, and by holding M and clicking, and then click 1 and click, and that'll click a constant, create a constant. You want to convert this to a parameter, and this will be emissive amount. We'll plug this into B. We'll grab our color, plug that into A, and then I'll plug that into emissive. And the reason we're also creating everything as parameters is because we'll be able to create material instances and just set them. We'd be able to set the color, textures, emissives without having to recreate all this again over and over. I set a default value for my emissive at 15. And now we want some opacity. I'm also going to set the color to red. So now we have this red ball. So now I want to hold M and click, and hold M and click again. We're going to get the alpha of our texture and the alpha of our color. And then we're going to hold 1 and click, create a constant, and right click, convert to parameter. This will be our opacity, which by default will set to 0.5. Plug that into B. Boom, now we have the texture, and it's cutting out the background. Basically, it's getting the alpha of the this, so that now you only see the actual crosshairs. So now we have our material created. We can come over here and set our material in here, and master crosshair. But if we want to browse to our material, we can actually create a material instance. MI for material instance. You can make however many you want. When you open this up, you can set the emissive amount, the opacity, the color, and we forgot the sector texture sample. So you want to come back to your M master crosshair and convert to a parameter. Now we have our crosshair texture. And now we can come in here and we can set it whatever we want for our crosshair texture for this one. For example, I'm just going to set the UE4 logo. You can set the opacity, how much the glow is. You can set the color. Said it was a blue one, so I'm going to set this one to blue. So we have our line trace. So now we want to come back to our master character, our first person character, and go to our event graph. Create a branch. And right click is locally controlled. Plug this in like this. So that will just run it for each individual client. And if it is, we will just want to run our Crosshair Trace. And now you can see we have everything displaying. I'm just going to test out that other crosshair. Just shows up the dot because it's not meant to set up like that. I noticed something that I did with removing some of those movement controls at the beginning. Actually, something to do with what I did here broke the movement input. So you might want, if you wanted to use this project and want to look at another blank project, just get your movement inputs back that I deleted here. But you're probably not going to be using this for this project specifically. You're just going to want your spawn projectile, which you don't really need if you already have a projectile spawning or a line trace. Basically all you need is your crosshair trace, and you'll basically just make your crosshair trace, create your variables, and run it on tick. Set your material to whatever you want, and it will trace from muzzle. You'll obviously want to set the muzzle to your own gun. And just going to quickly show you how to toggle the laser on and off. So let's create a toggle laser. Create a branch. This is optional. And if it's on, we will trace, and if it's off, we won't. Let's put it on there just to know what it is. Just gonna color this so we know that that's another thing that we need right there. I'm just gonna make a quick input for 1, not F1, 1. And if it's pressed, we're just gonna flip flop. I don't like to use these, but it's just for a quick test. So basically, it'll check. It'll switch between them both depending on the flip flop. So now we don't have it on. We click 1 and our projectile appeared. Our decal appears. We press 1 and it turns off. And you can do the same thing with aiming. Just have a check for if you're aiming or not there, or whatever else you want. Just gonna set that crosshair back. That's gonna be everything for this episode. Might do some expansion on this in the future if you have any suggestions for it. If you found this video helpful and want to see more, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button so you don't miss out on any other tutorial uploads. If you have any questions, suggestions, or comments, feel free to leave those in the comment section below or join my Discord community. Thanks, and I'll see you all in the next episode.